stop
Well,
harassing me.
if if the experts have these issues, then I think
Yes.
we normal humans are okay. We're
Yes.
gonna fare okay. So again, I'm Alex Beattie, divorce prep coach, the divorce planner. Today, I am joined by a very esteemed guest, Kim Polinder of KP Counseling. Kim specializes in working with individuals, but couples primarily, helping them navigate all of the kind of ups and downs of a relationship. All the ups and downs are normal, but sometimes when life throws you a huge curveball like a divorce or a breakup or a separation, all of the above, it can really kind of knock you back on your heels. And your life doesn't just stop when you go through a divorce. You're still navigating this relationship dynamic you've had with somebody. You are working potentially in your home, outside of your home, and trying to maintain your life while navigating the end of an important relationship in your life. And so to that, Kim, I'm just going to jump in. I have a couple questions to ask. So if anybody joining us has a question about how to really navigate the emotional side and all the big feelings that get stirred up. And I think, Kim, people get really surprised that even in the most amicable of situations, when you get to a point where you're ending a marriage or just separating from a long-term relationship, and you feel like you kind of had already exhausted everything and you're like, okay, well, I'm okay with the decision. People get really surprised when they get hit by big feelings because they think they should be over it. And some of the most surprising ones are things like grief and shame that come into play as well. So I'm just going to kick off with the first question, which is, you know, this is a big one, and I think it pertains to people breaking up in any form, divorce, not a divorce, is what can you do if you can't get validation or closure from your soon-to-be ex during a divorce?
Yeah. I thank you so much for the great question. I think it's something that everyone goes through any breakup, divorce or not. And you mentioned something earlier before we got cut off, and that was the loss of someone in your life. So whenever you have the loss of someone in your life, it's experienced as kind of a betrayal, which sounds weird. Like, yes, maybe there was actual cheating in your marriage, and that's why you're getting divorced. But just the loss of someone in your life is betrayal. Like the ultimate betrayal in life is when someone passes away. So that's why it's so difficult to navigate this person in your life and all of a sudden they're gone. So just understanding that even if it's amicable, this explains why divorce is so unsettling. It's you're giving up the hopes and dreams. Now, when it comes to your question specifically, I put the question back on the follower, the viewer, whoever is navigating this, is when it comes to healing, what do you consider validation? What do you consider closure? What do you need for closure? Because it's going to be different things for different people. So a lot of times we might hear things like, well, I need them just to admit this mistake. I need them to make this apology. All right, things that you can control. What would help you? Well, I want to feel understood. And this is kind of, I'm now inserting answers. People want to feel understood in their pain. They want, you mentioned shame. They want to feel less shameful. And the path toward that is to be able to talk to someone, whether it's a best friend, a grandparent, a therapist, whoever it is, someone who could give you that space because there is value in being able to express vulnerability and to have someone hear you and accept you, console you, and know that you are normal.
Yeah.
So,
I love that. You gave us so much great stuff in that answer. Thank you. And a couple of things I want to touch on is this idea of number one, get help, talk about it. It can feel incredibly isolating. Look, I came to this work having gone through a divorce and creating the space that I really desperately wanted out there. And so I know how isolating it can feel, right? And by the way, it's for any big life challenge. If you people don't expect to get sick, if you get sick, if you lose a job, all of these things, if you get a divorce, it is the end of one chapter, long chapter of your life that you thought defined what your life was. And even when that changes, it is letting go of everything associated. There's a future associated. There's a security associated, right? So I think I totally agree with you. You need to get out there and connect and make sure that you have the support around you when you're going through a big breakup like this. We had a couple of things I just wanted to drop in. We're getting, this is really, I think, touches a lot of people. So some of the comments we're getting in, this is crushing me. So true. Guilt, somebody said, that bringing up that feeling. uh, with Moon and Moon says it's so rare when it ends on good terms. Um, Carver says going through this now, how to ensure I can meet my child's emotional needs in the midst of feeling lost in my own sadness. This has been a huge struggle. That's actually a great one, which I'd love to, if you can take that on right now, Kim, I think that would be great.
Yeah, I think a lot of times parents like to shelter their children from raw emotions. And I get that you don't want to be emotionally dysregulated and all over the place, but it's important to be able to demonstrate what healthy emotional regulation looks like. And that means feeling your
Yeah.
feelings, being able to be sad and that it not be threatening, be sad and that you still love your child just as much. And, you know, your partner, your ex still loves them just as much that to be able to talk through your feelings. This is why I feel sad. Yeah, I had a lot of expectation, you know, depending on the age of your child, obviously. So a lot of it depends on the age of the child, but they're just looking for security and to know that you're okay, actually, that everything's going to be okay. And so finding some way to embrace vulnerability to whatever level is appropriate for their age,
Yeah.
there's value in that.
Fabulous answer. I totally agree. The thing in them is that like a divorce is that's grown up stuff, right? And so if you have kids, it's not they don't need the details of it, right? They just need to see that they have two adults because their entire world is being rocked just as yours is. But I am a parent and I have found that what parenting actually means to me is that I'm a human Sherpa. And by that, it's like I'm giving them all the skills of what it means to be a human being, how to navigate challenges in life. And then when I go through things, modeling behavior so that they have an example and a skill set when they come up, or a frame of reference at the very least, that, oh, I saw we kind of went through a hard time. I saw how to kind of navigate it because having gone
Yes.
through my own divorce with children, you know, my talking points to them, first of all, it's not, like I said, divorce is a grown-up business. It's not for kids. This is two adults have made this choice and they're moving forward, and kids are kids. Protect them from all the details. They don't need it. They don't need it. They're not your friends. They're children. If you feel like you don't have anybody to confide in and you're tempted to talk to your kids, please go seek support elsewhere. That is
Yes.
not for their little ears and their little psyches. But what I used to say is like, mom and dad might not be husband and wife anymore, but we're still a family. So that immediately tells them, oh, we don't just throw people out when we're connected and we're family. We are of value. So I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. It's delicate. It can be tempting, I think, to act out when you're in pain and not
Yes.
think of their the bigger picture for them. So something I'm always talking about with clients in a different way is put it before you open your mouth, put it through the 5-5-5 rule, which is how is this going to affect them in 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, 5 months, 5 years? And if it's not a positive effect, please don't share it with them.
So true. So true.
well, jumping into my next question, look, as I mentioned, when you're going through a big life challenge, like ending this kind of relationship, the rest of your life doesn't just stop, right? And you're nursing all of these feelings, you're proceeding with life as normal, which doesn't feel normal. How can you take care of your mental health during this time so that you can be there for your kids, for yourself, and be aware going through the divorce process?
Well, the number one rule is try not to
Mm.
isolate. You're going to be so tempted to isolate because of all the underlying reasons that you already mentioned. Shame, grief is normal. For you to feel sad is normal. It's okay to feel sad, and that doesn't mean that you have to get back together with them. Being sad doesn't mean that you are a completely broken, unlovable person. You know, we tack on all these connotations to emotions, and if we allow ourselves to feel sad or angry or whatever, then all of a sudden we're going to agree to everything that we were taught growing up, that you're hopeless, you'll never be lovable, no one, you'll never find anyone better than me, all this propaganda that we're taught. So try not to isolate because otherwise you get in your head and you get in your triggers
Yeah.
and you get pulled into those core wounds. And all of a sudden that bias starts to seep in of, oh, yep, I was told that I would never be successful in life. I was told that I'm shameful and I'm bringing down the family name. And here we go, confirmation bias confirmed. So it's important to stay at top of our triggers, especially as you were saying, when we're around children who are watching our every move and looking to us to how to navigate the situation. It's important to not, completely trash divorce negotiations and go down that rabbit hole because of the triggers that you both are taking to it. So the best way to do that is to get out of your head
Mhm.
and socialize your feelings, your vulnerabilities, and your problems with others. Like I said, it can be a best friend, it can be a family member. And if you find yourself particularly ruminating, cycling, and not being able to get out of these horrible feelings, talk to a
Yeah.
professional. Because if you're drowning in feelings, feelings are a result of your thoughts, your narrative, your perspective. And I've found that it's always possible to massage and reframe that narrative that creates then automatically different thoughts. That's the way
It,
out of your feelings, so to speak.
totally agree. And just picking up on what you said, like the foundation of my entire coaching practice as a divorce prep coach is built on the idea of there's an emotional side to divorce and there's a business side, and you need to separate the two. And kind of talking about building on what you were saying about addressing those feelings in the appropriate manner and separating it. Like I said, it's like there is a business negotiation going on at the same time. The last thing you want is to be reactive to something, and make a decision that is going to affect you long term because you weren't actually taking a breath, taking a beat, addressing, okay, I'm being triggered in this moment. This is this. And but separately, I have to actually act on this and make logical and smart financial decisions at the same time. So there is a delicate balance, of going through that. And it's really tough. And I think a lot of people don't realize, when you're going through a divorce and you have to, it is a negotiation. Like that's just a legal thing, right? That you're breaking up your relationship. So it's a normal breakup. But then if you have a signed piece of paper between the two of you and the state, then you have to go through this whole legal rigmarole, which is not straightforward. Like there are so many things about the process that feel so personal, and they're like attacks. Like if you hear something from your soon to be ex and they're responding to something about maybe parenting time or maybe splitting up a retirement account, all of a sudden it, like you said, it triggers all of these narratives that you have of I'm not being valued, my worth is low, because, and this person doesn't even see my worth. Like I can't get them to, you can get really caught up and make some big mistakes by attaching all of those emotions to the legal process. So please, out there, separate the two. When you're feeling triggered in the negotiation process, stop. As I said, you never have to give an answer in the moment, and make sure that you are seeking, the support that you need, like with a Kim Polinder. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't be shy about that stuff. There are options out there for you. Well, that kind of segues into my next question. And then I'm going to go through the comments again because I've seen a lot dropped in. When you get to the end of a marriage, there's usually been, some tension or communication breakdowns. What are some ways to effectively communicate with somebody, your soon to be ex, that you're not getting along with during this process of divorce?
Yeah. We need to come into full acceptance of who a person is and their capacity for rational conversation, their capacity for empathy, whatever the case may be. I get questions all the time about, I've tried these 10 things with my partner to get them to couples care therapy or to get them to engage, but it's not working. What can I do differently? And so it's kind of that theme again of it's all my fault. It's my responsibility. I'm doing something wrong. When really the theme may be you have a partner who isn't capable of empathy or hasn't been taught it, who is not accountable for their actions, who is in an immature, emotionally traumatized space, and they can't show up the way you want. So I liken it to the analogy of if you knew your partner was an AI chatbot like ChatGPT, or however they were programmed to engage with you the way that they do. They never listen to you. They never validate you. They're always like seeking these ridiculously selfish, self-serving goals through the divorce negotiations. If you knew that they were a robot, and that's how they're programmed, software 1.0,
Mm-hmm.
how many hours would you spend trying to persuade them, trying to get them to understand you, trying to get them to change their ways? You just wouldn't. Why? Because they're a robot. They're a software program. It's like me arguing with the Mac
Yeah.
OS. If you if you come to this acceptance of who someone really is, you will move more out of the persuasion space and more into the acceptance space. And then it's engaging less, healthy detachment, going more through your lawyer, your attorney for what you need to do to get done. But what inevitably happens is you're being triggered by your partner for things from your past because however you feel with your partner about not validating you, not valuing you, not listening to you, discarding you so easily, abandoning you, I guarantee you those are patterns you have had in childhood. And it's just a continuation of them. And you're focusing everything on this divorce because it's your ex is the evil person, but really it's a lifetime pattern that you've been negotiating.
I'm nodding my head so much, it's probably going to fall off my neck. I think that your analogy about the AI bot and is brilliant, quite frankly. So your previous career experience definitely came in handy for your current. And you're right. You know, it is very much an exercise in seeing those narratives and those pain points really that are within you. It's like, why you have to stop and really ask yourself, why am I waiting for this person to validate me? Why am I asking them to see my value? You actually need to turn that inward, as you pointed out so astutely, and say, I am of value. I don't need to convince somebody else. And here's the evidence I have to back it up. You know, we were talking about all that stuff that we have had baked into us, whether from family, friends, childhood experience, our own internal turning over of a narrative of making us feel less than. Divorce can be an opportunity to take hold of that and reverse that. I love that idea, Kim. I really love that idea a lot. I just want to jump in and share. Living with Net said, my co-parent and I ended on quote unquote good terms and didn't hide anything from our kids. It's been 3 years and we just had the conversation about feelings and the whys. Thank you for sharing that so much. Thank you. And then the James Notary said, what are you to do when the soon to be ex is sharing details about the divorce to the children? Oh boy. Oh boy. I can handle that. You can, Kim, if you want to jump in. I think probably you first, please.
Oh, please, go ahead, because it touches on both the legal and the, emotional. So
Yeah. So first things first, if you have the relationship of communication with your ex or soon to be ex, and you can say, keep it simple, right? I always like to keep things in the acronym for BIF, which is brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Our child so and so made this known to me. You know, they were clearly confused about the information being given. It is, our children are not a go-between, so clear boundaries. If there is something with regard to our divorce that you want to discuss with the child, please bounce it off of me first. And if you don't have that kind of relationship, then that is something where then you need to check in with your attorney and say, this is a problem. How do we handle it ASAP? Because if you don't have a relationship, set up where you can have a constructive conversation, then you're going to have to take it to the next step if you want it to stop. Because as I said, children should not be dragged into this. Protect them at all costs. Kim, I'm so curious to hear what you're going to say.
yeah, I agree with that perspective as well. And again, it goes back to who that person is. I get clients who come to me and they're navigating divorce, or they are about to, or they did, and they're still dealing with an ex who trashes them. And they tell me, I'm worried that they're going to badmouth me to the kids and to their family. It's like, yep, they sure are. Like, you have to focus on what you can control. So what can you control in this situation? You can do the steps that you just outlined so perfectly, and that's all you can do. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. If you have someone who's going to trash talk you to the kids, you probably already know that. And it's just do your best to navigate it and focus on your relationship with the children to
Yeah.
counteract because they're going to get two versions of the reality,
100%.
right? So just play the long game with their children. Don't jump into the mud. And even though it's so tempting to trash talk the ex, play the long game because they will look back on these years and see that you were stable, steady, grounded. You weren't trash talking the other person. it'll pay off. Maybe not right now, but it'll pay off at some point.
You bullseye, hit it right in the center of the bullseye. And what I'll also say is I think it can be, having gone through this, it can be so painful to think, I can't believe that my kids are being painted this picture of me when I love them so much. But your kids know, I'm sorry, they do. And your behavior sets the tone. So when they're with you and they see how you behave, that you do not emulate that kind of like trash talking or bad mouthing, that you're giving them the tools to be able to, and not just in the dynamic with you and your ex, but in the world at large, that you treat people with respect, that, you treat people as you are being treated, you want to be treated, that you speak only in a way that is respectful. You're showing them, right? You're showing them that people operate with value and character and integrity. Okay. This actually gets me kind of emotional. You have to trust that that's being baked in. And unfortunately, they will discover that about their parent later on, and you cannot protect them.
Yeah.
You just can't.
Yeah.
You got to let it go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh,
It's just so painful when to your children, your ex is painting this picture, like you said. So you just have to accept that some reality, some version of reality is getting painted. And all you can do is, what can you control? You can control your reality with your children. And it
absolutely.
goes a long way.
It really does. And I obviously know I'm an emotional person in that way. I've been through this. I've seen other people have to navigate it in the worst of situations. And it is one of the biggest challenges that you can face as a parent. And you just have to trust. Don't jump in. Do not jump in.
Yeah.
Coaching with Kari says, yes, KP, you are right on. Name those feelings, feel them, and show good coping. Let's see here. Moona Moon, kids, thank you for touching on regulated emotions. It's hard for children to understand a parent can have a lack of positive parenting skills. Oh, how can you address that? I think we just touched on that. I think we
Yeah.
just actually totally did. I hope that you found that helpful. And then I've got one more question. I'm just going to wipe this tear away. And then, let's see. Moon also says, I say always, happy people don't hurt people on the other side of the coin. Hurt people can. It's true. And also I will say that people can change and they can grow and they can do better. We are not our worst moments for the most part. So also leave space. And I will say I'm a big believer in a lot of Stoic philosophies. And I feel like we've been dealing with the same problems for 2,000 years. Humans have been wrestling with this. And one of my favorite is to hold yourself to a higher standard than others, right? It's like, that's kind of goes back to what you said, Kim, about just focus on what's in your control. And that's you. That's really you. You can't control how anybody else is going to handle anything, divorce, life in general. So just keep your focus and your energy on you. So
And also, there are healthy versions of every emotion.
Yeah.
So just know that you don't have to like push these certain negative emotions over to the corner. There are healthy ways of dealing with all emotions.
We got another, let me see, question or comment dropped in. A really big curveball emotion that has stopped me in my tracks has been, what if I no longer feel that the divorce is the right way to go anymore? How should I approach that? That's a great question, Kim.
Wow. Yeah. My first question would be, does your partner agree? Do you think they would agree?
Yeah.
And the second thing would be, have no regrets in life. Find a way to bring up the conversation, even if it's exploratory and not conclusive, like we need to get back together, even if it's just exploring the idea, and see what they say, and have your arguments, so to speak, prepared, present your case, and make it compelling. And just see because vulnerability breeds vulnerability.
Yeah.
So perhaps if you come in a vulnerable way to your partner, you might be making really good points. You might get them to, even if they hadn't considered it before, you might get them to consider it for the first time. And wouldn't that be worth pursuing? Because you made a lifetime commitment to this person. Why not explore every nook and cranny to make sure that you have no regrets? And you're not thinking 20 years from now, what if I had, suggested that to this person? I don't know, maybe we'd still be together. Don't live life like
Yeah.
that. So
Shoot your shot. I mean, the whole thing is about communication. Like if you're in a position where things change and you can sit down and communicate that, you're never going to look back and then say, I didn't honor myself in that moment, and this is life. I think we're painted this idea that life is black and white. It's A or B. It's not. It's all gray area. So when you kind of cut yourself some slack and realize that the trajectory of your life and your choices are going to be this, up and down and non-linear experience, and that's what actually is normal. There is no one right way to do life. The only right way to do it is to be kind, quite frankly, to yourself and to others. Everything else this is the big experiment. Take the risk, do the thing. And if it's a reversal, it's a reversal, right? It just is what it is. I love that. So James Notary has dropped in a couple of times that real appreciation for us answering the earlier question about kids and divorce, and just said, which I love, I've been giving them a lot of hugs, and we can all use lots of hugs. I love that. Well, look, I usually like to keep these like a hot 20 to 25 minutes. I do have one more question.
Sure. Yeah.
Which is the big one, right? Which we covered a little bit, which is, I think, one of the most surprising things that you go through when you're going through a divorce or a separation, the end of a relationship. Even when you feel like you were over it, or we dealt with it, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's like you can get knocked sideways by feelings of grief. And I don't think a lot of people really automatically identify grief and a divorce, right? So how can you kind of, how can you honor, especially if you weren't expecting this to come up, and how can you create, give yourself tools so that you can actually acknowledge the grief and work through it?
Yes, this is such a great question, and it also touches on shame again. So a lot of times people will lump grief with shame
Mm-hmm.
or grief with
Mm-hmm.
negativity. And grief is a very normal emotional reaction. It shows you are a human being, you're not a sociopath, you can feel grief, and even if it's amicable, the way grief works is that you get hit in
Yeah.
waves. And when you least expect it, like, I thought I was over this, I'm having such a good year, and then all of a sudden a year later something happens and then you get toppled a little bit. So that's normal. If it comes up, the grief part, sit with it. Feelings, once again, you're feeling the feeling, right? And you're confused and you're struggling. Look at the thoughts that are driving it. In that moment, what makes you feel so sad and remorseful, and process those thoughts that are coming up. Now, I want to call out that if you're the type who lumps grief and shame into the same
Mm-hmm.
bucket, let's work on separating
Mm-hmm.
that. Grief, good, healthy, normal. Shame, that points to, again, what we were talking about earlier with the early life experiences, childhood. If you're experiencing shame in a divorce, it's very different from grief, and there's a pattern there that is there to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
How has shame played out in your life? How has shame been a regular conclusion, a regular experience, emotional experience? What do you feel shameful about outside of your marriage? That'll give you a clue. What did you feel shameful about as a child? Shame is something that there's a lot of potential there to create lasting shifts that have nothing to do with your divorce. And so if you're feeling a lot of shame with divorce, like I grew up in a very conservative Christian community and family, and divorce was just a no-no for religious reasons. Like, you get married under God, you don't
Yeah.
divorce. It just wasn't an option. My parents even didn't support my sister's divorce because even though she was, I'll keep it tame, she was not treated very well and had very good reasons for getting divorced. They did not support her.
Mm-hmm.
And so shame, look at where that comes from and what's driving that. And there are going to be a lot of answers there that will spur you on for personal growth and healing.
I think that's a really very beautiful way to wrap up this conversation, and very productive way, because it puts you in the position to make a decision. Are you going to view this experience in your life as a catalyst for positive change for yourself, to really assess, it's a great time for deep personal assessment. Where am I now? How am I feeling now? Is this working for me? Is this a true narrative? Is there an opportunity for me to shake off some kind of false narratives that I have, to be able to say, what do I have in my life that I want more of? What do I want less of? Because you're actually building towards something new with a divorce. And that opportunity can really enrich you, and it should excite you as much as you're dealing with what can be really difficult, big feelings. On the other side, make room for to get excited about stuff. Make room to celebrate when you are addressing these big emotions, and taking charge of them and not letting them take charge of you. I mean, everything can be an opportunity, and I really am grateful for this conversation, Kim. Thank you so much. I'd love to do it again.
Yeah, thank you. I always love coming back here.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you. It's always a wonderful conversation. And thank you to everybody who joined us. If I didn't get to your question, don't hesitate to drop it in the comments. This entire conversation is going to be posted across all my platforms as soon as we log off. And if you're not familiar with today's guest, relationship coach Kim Polinder of KP Counseling, please check out her account. She is a wealth of information and just a delightful human. So thank you to everybody, and thank you to you, Kim. I'll see you next time.
Alex.
Be well.